Hello, you are listening to the Jaunty Mantis, a podcast of creative questions for curious gamers. I am your forever host, Jesse, and I am joined today by Bill White, professor of RPG studies. Did I get that right? Did I already mess
Not
it up?
quite right. I'm actually a professor of communication arts and sciences at Penn State Altoona, where mainly what I teach is public speaking, but my research agenda since about 2008 has been game studies, and in particular studying role-playing games and or what we've begun to call analog games, and that's a line of research that I pursue.
Excellent. And Bill is also a GM, game mother par excellence.
Well,
Um,
nice to say. Nice of
if
you
you
to say.
if you've heard us talk about like what skilled us up most, and Maddie has talked about playing Dungeon World at Gen Con back in 2017, Bill is the guy that was running that game. So I'm super psyched to have him on the show tonight.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I'm actually working on a book called "The Knowledge of the Game Master," and it's I've been working on it since for a while. It should be done. That is, a draft is due at the end of October, and so I'm wrapping that up now as the semester begins. And I feel like I have many opinions about GMing as a as a what do you I have many different things to call it: art, discipline, uh, profession, even, right? There's the sense that it's becoming increasingly professionalized. So I think there's a lot to say about it, and like I feel like having a degree in communication has qualified me to do nothing else but be a GM,
Yeah.
uh, because it's fundamentally a communication skill, I think.
Yeah, I think part of my success is I was formerly a teacher, and
Uh,
part of my success as a teacher came from me being a GM, and then I got better at being a GM, or I got better being a teacher as a result of GMing, and just like there was a nice little feedback loop. And as far
yeah,
as
yeah.
writing a book about GMing, like reflecting on all the things you do when you're running a table, like how long could that take to sit down and write about that? I mean, it's
Right. Well, it's interesting to to trace um, the that the the shift from the referee to the GM, and what new thing about GMing gets invoked, or the way that people think about what you're doing when you're quote unquote playing a game versus, quote unquote telling a story, as two different parallel acts, different but parallel acts. And like the thing that um I noticed is that you the like both are described as, oh, you have to be impartial, you have to be fair, you have to, not know the rules. But it's only when you have role playing becoming a part of it that the notion of GMing as performance gets introduced. Frank Menser won like a invitational GM award at one early Gen Con, and talking to the reporter uh, for Dragon Magazine, he's like, well, the fact that I was a professional musician meant that I have experience being an entertainer, and that's helped me at the table, with my players. And so that notion of performance is something that I thought was an interesting thing to emerge as part of what it means to be a GM. And there's that has that has both positive and negative aspects, in the sense that the notion of storytelling skill and performer skill is important, but it's also something that um, contributes to a kind of cult of the GM, which you hear people talking about, right? And the notion that,
yeah.
oh, the GM should be a player too, and it's supposed to be fun for the GM too. And so that the difference between a transactional GM who's there, or I think I've heard people call it like, oh, a service GM, who's there, like, if you had fun, I had fun, versus an interactive GM who sees their role as being um, sort of as alter ego for the players. The interlocutor, the person who's responding to what the players offer, and that's their role, which is something different than, oh, and that's a performance, but that's different from, oh, I'm the one who's supposed to be entertaining the players, which I don't know that that's true. I mean, yes, you're that's part of it. You're all there to entertain each other in a way, right? But your job is, I feel like the role of the GM is about um, giving players something to react to and interact with, rather than entertainment. But I don't know. That's terribly controversial. I don't think that's
Yeah,
terribly controversial.
I mean, I've seen that at your table in the handful of games on demand I've got to play with you at Gen Con. Your sheer delight in the consequences and reaction is just something that's been really, really fun to be a part of and something I can take into my own games.
Good.
Uh,
Yeah.
you've
I
almost got me spiraling down a rabbit hole, and we're like 5 minutes in because I have this unified field theory I'm putting together based on something I heard on I'm going to get the name of the podcast wrong, but Ludological Alchemists Hypothesis, Luke Crane's
Sure.
podcast, and
Sure.
then
Yeah.
something else I heard on Mastering Dungeons. Um, like that, the thing you just said, I really want to talk about it, but we'll never get to the interview if I did. So
Okay,
maybe,
all right, so let's get down to business. Like I said, I have many opinions, and I'm sure I'm tedious in my way. So let's focus on the project at hand, which is putting together an oral history of role playing, as I understand. So
indeed.
on with it.
Okay, so Bill, can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up?
Sure. I say I'm from New Jersey. We actually moved to New Jersey when I was in middle school, but um, that's where I was in middle school and in high school, and so it's a suburb of New York City in northern New Jersey. Uh, I guess just what you expect when you hear northern New Jersey, I guess.
What
Um,
what do you think people expect when they hear Northern New
well,
Jersey?
what exit and all of that stuff. It is a um, like I thought it was a really great place to grow up. Um, Gosh, I haven't. This was not a question I expected. So it's the suburbs, and it that meant that like Dorothy Parker said about Oakland, there's no there. Oh, and ironically, the name of the town I grew up in was Oakland.
Okay.
She meant Oakland, California, but so it's uh, a it was actually a fairly well-to-do suburb, and
We talking like tree-lined streets or
yeah, I would say so. The uh, like cul-de-sacs and big backyards, and there was definitely a right side and wrong side of the tracks kind of thing. But I was from the right side of the tracks, or my dad had moved us to New Jersey for the schools, and so that's where I finally went to public school rather than Catholic school, and I made good friends there. Is the thing. I was like the dumbest smart kid in that circle of people, and it was in high school that I got to you know be the GM, be the dungeon master for a group of my friends, and we played a lot in high school. Um,
how did you first become aware of tabletop role-playing games?
I had actually read about it in a, on summer vacation. I went to a bookstore and bought a book called The Playboy Winner's Guide to Board Games, and there was a chapter in it. I have it again on my shelf. I refer to it occasionally. Um, and in it talked about war games and it talked about role playing games. There was um, a chapter that had been added in 1979. Like there was a first version of this book that came out in 1975, and then the 1979 version, they added a chapter on role playing games. And so I read about it. And I didn't get it. Didn't make sense to me, or I wasn't quite sure. And I know why it didn't make sure, because there's one of those quotes. Oh, here's what play looks like. A little snippet of play. And one character says, "I detect evil," and the GM says, "Well, you detect a little bit of evil in the party and a lot behind the door." And I was like, "How the hell does he know that? How can he know that? I don't understand." Um, and and so I read about it, but I was more interested in the like there was a little section on diplomacy, and so my friends and I started playing diplomacy, um, and then and so that was my first exposure to D&D, and as I'm thinking about it, like I don't think I'd heard about like Dallas Egbert, maybe in passing. I didn't pay it much attention. It was a couple of years later that maybe I was a freshman, and when a upperclassman invited me and a couple of my friends to like play war games in his basement, right? We played Third Reich and Squad Leader on the basement, his basement on the pool table. And then one day he pulled out Dungeons and Dragons, the blue book. Um,
Okay. The
yeah,
blue one. Okay, that's
yeah, I guess
old
that's
school.
the Holmes version.
Yeah.
And then we got players handbooks, and we got DM guides and monster manuals, and eventually, okay, now we can play. And then I guess when he graduated, or actually like even before he graduated, I started running dungeons and was the dungeon master for my group. And so um this was the early 80s, right? So 81 or 82 when I
Okay.
started playing.
Did you have any other particular interests or hobbies growing up around before, just before or around the same time?
I was a model rocketeer for a while.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and yeah, I dug that. That was fun. And before we moved to New Jersey, I belonged to a model rocket club. Did it a little bit after moving, but there was no club locally, and so it's hard to do it. It's hard to do it by yourself. It's because you need space. You need um, space. So I did that, um, and I was in the chess club, and again, the worst chess player on the team, but uh, yeah, I was a geeky kid.
Yeah, I think seems to be a theme with people I've interviewed for this project is that first game on that pool table. Uh,
Yeah,
this is asking. This is a stretch. Do you remember how it felt while you were
I
playing?
do. I actually do. I actually do. Like because we had little minis that we weren't doing anything. Okay, that's your mini, and we use it just to represent positions, without any real rules for it. And I can remember I played. Geez, I guess it was a dwarf named Mensch the dwarf, and I just remember like all my friends going, oh, we'll moving their minis like, oh, I'll go back here. I'll go behind this guy. I'll go behind the dwarf. Uh, and so yes, I remember it being confusing and exciting and just intense. Like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah, I remember really, really um, like just being focused in on what the heck is going on. There was a dungeon. There was green slime we had to scrape off of people, and um, my character eventually found the axe of the dwarvish lords.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, yeah, it was really good. It was really good. I I uh, I I just flashed on a character that I had we, the called Slippery Jim. He's named after he's an elven thief named after the Harry Harrison character, Stainless
Okay.
Steel Rat, and he lost his leg trying to cross a lava flow. I feel like I told a group of players the story recently, but he started moving cautiously across what he thought was frozen or solidified lava, but it was just a crust, right, over. And so halfway across, when he started running, his one leg went through, and he lost his leg, and so there was a one not much call for a one-legged elven thief in the dungeon, so he retired and started an inn somewhere or something.
Um,
So yes,
if
sorry,
when you get to play,
yes,
uh, and I know you really do enjoy DMing because we we identified you as a DM or a GM. Uh,
either is fine.
Game mother, we try to remind ourselves to say on the Mantis. Um,
Sounds good.
do you have a theme in the characters you tend to play?
I, you know, I don't know that let me see. Um, Often I'll play the cleric type. I don't, you know what I mean? Whatever that role is in the game, like for some reason, I don't know. I just kind of like that. Um, but I like the way I play characters when I get to play is like I have a thing and I go after that thing, and win or lose, I go after it, right? And so, um, and and uh, like it can be a little obnoxious, frankly. I think that it's uh like there's a lot of deference to or there can be a lot of like deference to the what are we supposed to be doing, what are we here to do, and I don't care about any of that. I'm like, okay, I have my guy, and I know what this I have, like once I have this character, the character goes after something, and for me the game is about, does he get it or not?
Yeah.
Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. So but a short answer to that question is, oh, I usually I'll play the cleric.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Um, did you when you started? I mean, you got to play that one game, and you said a year later or so, you're running your first games. Have
Yeah.
you mostly played or run games or both? And has that changed over time?
I've mostly been the GM.
Okay.
I like being the GM. Um, uh, and that's been pretty consistent since I started running games. And um, like, I'll, uh, I mean, I'll play. Like for example, we're sort of on hiatus now, but for a long time I was running a game on Roll20 with my brother and some other guys, and then my brother wanted to run a game, so I played in his game. Uh, but I don't seek out games to play in, honestly. Right?
Hmm.
I think about running games and the games that I want to run. And I don't buy games anymore unless I can see a space where, oh, I can see I'm going to run this game. I do this thing on campus. I call it Common Hour D&D. Common Hour is what we call the hour twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays when there's no classes. That's when students are supposed to have their club meetings and faculty are supposed to have their faculty meetings, and but it's an hour twice a week. And so uh, I've been taking one of those for like the past 2 years and saying, okay, it's Common Hour D&D, and we're going to play some indie game or just something. And usually it's stuff that it's been stuff that I've been designing. Uh, so we did this thing last year, mostly all last year, called World of Many Things, where we use a deck of many things as a world building tool and also as an oracle
Oh,
to
cool.
like resolve things. Oh yeah, it's very cool. Like the kids don't know how good they got it. But I've recruited students and faculty um, to come play, and towards the end of last year, I started to get other people to run games. Right, so there's this. I have a colleague who's into, like, he likes Iron Sworn and carved in Brindlewood. That Brindlewood Bay.
Yeah.
Uh, he likes the oracles, and he likes the indie style of um, mysteries, and so he's interested in that space. So he ran
Yeah,
some
you
games
said
for
Oracle, and I immediately like thought of Starforge, which I have on my shelf. Like,
Starford. Yeah,
yeah, right
yeah,
there.
yes, exactly. Right, he's into that, and yeah, I think that's cool too. Um, the first game that I designed used an Oracle, oracular kind of resolution mechanic as well. Um, and then I got a student, roped in a student who's like a 5e DM who ran a little like itch.io indie game that he found, where we played Space Marines, and you could do whatever you could, you succeeded, but you couldn't laugh, right? And if you laugh, you threaten you might explode. So, but that was a lot of fun.
Oh,
I
that
forget what it
sounds
was
great.
called, but yeah, it was cool. So I want to do more of that this year, right? And so that to a certain extent, that's me letting go, right? It's not just okay, my me like strong arming people to get them to come in and play some games with me, but to give students and give people a chance to explore different ways of playing, right, and different games that are out there, and um, so so I don't have to run every game, but I like running games, and I want people to run more games better. Like
Yeah.
run games better. Um, but let me ask you a question. I haven't heard the story about how I changed Maddie's life, um, um, and if you have a moment, can you tell me what that story is?
Yeah, sure. We've talked about a lot on the podcast, but basically, like it was our whole gaming group and Maddie, who lives out of state. We're all in Oklahoma. He's in Chicago.
Okay.
But Maddie is my very best friend, best man at my wedding, and godfather to my children. Like just like
Oh,
I love this dude, he loves me, and we miss you, Maddie. But he just had like 3 months ago his firstborn kid, so he's taking a well-deserved break to be
gotcha.
present as a father. And like, okay, fine, I understand that, like because
Yeah.
I also have children. But we went in 2017 to his first Gen Con, most of my gaming group's first Gen Con. I think it was my third. But yeah, we went and we just were kind of looking around. My wife and our friend Selena are very, very organized, and so they had booked a whole bunch of events. And so we were going to these events, and just sadly, event after event was like, this is a miss, this is a miss, this
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
miss. And I'm not going to name names because like the other thing I love about Gen Con is how overwhelmingly kind people are. So like I'm not gonna try and call people out on it. But then we found the games on demand. I think it might have been called like Indie Games Done Quick that year or something, or maybe it was just games on demand. But we got in the wash cycle of that and
Mm.
just hung out, got boarding pass after boarding pass. And one of those games, you were running Dungeon World.
Yeah, I
Um,
love that thing.
I'll have to send you. Carrie found the photo from Facebook. I wasn't in that game. I was doing a different one, I think.
Okay,
I was
okay.
playing Axon Punk, uh, I think, at the
How was
same
that?
time. It was great in the same room. I got to
Okay.
play an AI named Corporal Kittens. And so I was
Nice,
doing
nice.
like a like Tom Waits, Max Headroom mashup.
Okay.
And it was just a blast. So but yeah, Maddie was in that group, and from what he said, you came in with nameplates and had everybody write, like draw an index card of a map or something or say like, what's the thing you're afraid of meeting on the way there? And then wrote all of them down. And he had just never seen, because growing up on AD&D first edition, never
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
a game mother be like, hey, why don't you narrate the thing that's in the story that your
Yeah.
character's
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
interested
That's
in?
right. That's right. I remember. Yeah, that was yeah, because the like I love games on demand because that 2 hour slot means you have to be really, really tight. You have to
Hmm.
get it in there. And I know that like I used to not believe in 2 hour slots. I was like, oh, what are you doing? You need the 4 hours to run the game. But increasingly, I discovered no, 2 hours is enough, and you can really get the heart of it. And the thing I loved about that adventure using Dungeon World, I think I called it like Quest to Mount Purgato or something like that. And it was always, yeah, go around the table. And I could never quite get it to work. But often it would work well enough, because what I wanted was like, we would start in media res, and you do a little, like, fill out your playbook, kind of thing in Dungeon World. You make a few choices, and then like the creating the narrative, or creating the backstories. Like, we know you're on the way to this volcano, right? And that's where the adventure is. And so you started in the middle of the like with cameras on you. You're slogging through the dark forest on the way to Mount Purgato. And then what I wanted was people to like um say something in character to somebody else in character, and they'd respond in character, and then that would create the adventure, as well as creating their connections with each other. It was almost like always like a bridge too far to get everything from that. But it worked well enough, and with a good group, like they would get into it, right? They'd be like, oh yes, oh, I'm leading the way, and da, 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 and yeah, and I had a bunch of questions that were just leading questions, why can't we just why don't we have it already? Who wants it, right? Who's going to beat us there? And so yeah, so a list of questions, and that that worked well. The thing that didn't work quite as well was have them do it in character, you know, and create a bond as well. But I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think you and your brother had a podcast.
Yes, we called it Virtual Play.
Yeah,
And
he recommended it to me. I remember in the year after Gen Con, he went out and sought it out and listened to it a bunch, and then he was listening to Discern Realities and started teaching other people to play fantasy role-playing games using Dungeon World.
oh wow,
It flipped a
nice,
switch for him, and
nice.
like he's one of my favorite GMs now, like when he runs games. So
Very cool. Well, that's the work. I'm honestly, the reason we started the podcast was to uh try to understand games better, try to understand what's going on, and who's doing what. We've sort of pod faded now. Um uh but the project served its purpose, right? And I've, I've been able to use some of what we talked about and what we learned to design. And we did this together, a GM workshop that we run at Gen Con, and like teach people how to GM, or how to GM better, or be at least be more mindful and reflective about what it is that you are doing. And so the notion that the core of it, and actually, yeah, so at Gen Con, I would every morning run the GM workshop, and then go run games for Games on Demand, which is where I met you. Running Alien War, which is a game I love, because it's what I call Ouija board GMing, right?
okay,
Have I said this? Because
no,
it's like it's the basic pitch, right? It's the XCOM, the aliens are out there, or they're coming here. Unconfirmed reports of hostile alien action around the world, and you're there to investigate and stop them, and maybe shoot them. But when you start, the GM has no idea who the aliens are or what they want. That is, you as the GM are supposed to like not know what what the aliens are up to. It's only as the players like allude to aliens, right? Because in their motivations, they may know something about what the aliens have, what the aliens want, what the aliens are doing in their minds or in their neighborhood, and you just ask the player, well, you said, oh, you know what they want. Well, what is that, right? And then just use that and incorporate that. So it's the GM trick of using the player's answer to um, shape the fiction, but just
Yeah.
taking it seriously. So and the game that you guys played was a really terrific
Oh, it was so
version of it,
fun.
right?
And I have never, ever seen dice perform that badly for that many people.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like 60% of the rolls were a one. Like,
yeah.
is that hyperbole? It's,
When you're well, with a D4, that's not unheard of. Like it's so I feel like maybe I'm thinking about tweaking that because some groups would find that off-putting, right? But the game was doing what it was designed to do, right? Which was give you a really hard time on the first mission, and then you get back to base and level up, and then it all works better. But anyway,
oh, we had a
but
blast.
in the
I
in the
wouldn't fix
morning,
anything.
right? Oh, you okay? Good. That's good to hear. That's good to hear because you were bit particularly hard by that
Yes, yes.
and the
I
dice in the
fled and was
tower.
never seen again.
Yeah, I dug that. I kind of dug that. Um, yeah, uh there's a possibility that the squad will get ambushed and then the whole squad disappears. Um,
Oh, nice.
in that game, which I mean, there's a game that tells you what it is right there, right? And like
Yeah.
in that moment. Anyway, so but in the mornings I was running a GM workshop, and again we did a 2-hour version and a 4-hour version, and the 2-hour version works pretty well. The thing is, like, it's a classroom sized group. Uh, we maxed out at like we said we'll take 24. I think we may have had like 20 as the most folks that we had um, in the 2-hour session. It it Then we break them up into groups of 4. Tables of 4. Ideally, 3 or 4 is ideal. And if we have enough, call them like coaches, GM coaches, who are actually there as players, like they're at the table where when the group designs a dungeon using like a Dyson Logos map and some questions that I found in a zine by a guy named Jesse Bernico, which called Dungeons and Dilemmas, uh, regarding using dungeons as sort of moral puzzles or narrative using a narrative, creating backstory for your dungeon. You know, who built this place and why, what emotion was associated with it, what bad thing happened here, so no longer could be used for its original purpose, what of the past remained, what new thing arrived, what happens when old meets new, or new meets old, and how do the consequences spill out and create hooks for adventure, right? So we give them that basic format and some tools for like a quick kind of prep in about half an hour, and then try to spend an hour round robining around the table where each participant takes 5 minutes or is the GM for 5 minutes. Start at the door of the dungeon, and work through what we call the basic GM loop: describe, listen, judge. Right.
Hmm.
And actually, a friend of mine, I shared this with him after, because I was like talking with him late one night, and he's like, Judge, I have a viscerally bad reaction to that. I don't like Judge as the name for that last thing. I think it's Guide or something like that. And that's fine, but Judge, I think that's right. Um, but but I realized that there's a reason why people would react that way, because it does, sort of create this kind of authoritative, kind of position that is authoritative, maybe even authoritarian, right? But um, but there's got to be a buck stops here. But the thing that I realized was that that's a lot of pressure to put on someone, and so it's important to recognize that each of those elements, the describe, listen, judge, has a counterpart, right? So it's describe but invite, right? You're soliciting other people's engagement with it. It's
Oh, nice.
listen, but direct, right? Because you are responsible for the economy of attention at the table, and so you're not just passively listening. It's an active listening, but it's also directing, and it's judge but celebrate, right? You're like, and so I was very happy to hear you say that I think you use the word delight, and that's right. Like and I have to give the credit to Ron Edwards, who was the leading figure at the Forge, and does this thing online called Adept Play right now. And I was reading something he wrote, or listening to something he was saying, and he used the word, oh, we're here to celebrate this, right? We're celebrating this, and I was like, yes, that's the word. That's the
Yeah.
word for what this is. And so
I
be a
get
fan of the
in,
players is
yeah,
celebrate, right?
Apocalypse World and Forge in the Dark, be a fan of the players.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Right. And actually be a fan of the characters, right? And that's what it's like, oh, this is awesome. But yeah, so anyway, whatever it is.
but I think actually celebrate what happens as a result of their choices, good and bad, is
Good and bad.
probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a nice way of putting it. So,
Oh
so
man,
it was a
that
great Gen Con for me,
I'm
because
so glad.
I got
I'm
to do
glad I
all of
got to
those
play with
things.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great time. And that was a good group, delightful, delightful. Anyway, so, yeah, so
Do you
I've just unloaded a lot. Go ahead.
do you find yourself this is kind of a multi-part question. I'm trying to think of the most succinct way to put it. Do you find yourself drawn, as someone running games, drawn to certain types of stories, settings, or mechanics?
Oh,
And if so, how has that changed over your time in the hobby?
yeah. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Um, so, um, let me see. Oh, okay. So I think I was a pretty traditional, like as a high school kid, running games for my friends, running D&D, and I think my experience is a lot like a lot of people's experience, was like, oh, there's something here about how to make it work as like a narrative. It's cool narrative stories. I love it. And I'm gonna tell my story here, uh, and of course, like that.
That way lies madness.
That way lies, yes, that way lies madness. Now, the things that succeeded for me were, like, I remember designing, okay, designing a diplomacy board. The strategic war game, diplomacy.
Yeah, when
Uh,
I was a teacher, I taught ESL, and at the end of our 1 month sessions, I we would play diplomacy in
okay.
English. So
Great,
yeah.
good. Yeah, nice. So I designed in high school, I designed a diplomacy map for my campaign world. And then we had, um, uh, you know, the players in my campaign played, the great powers of the world, playing diplomacy. And then that became the background, that became background detail for the setting, right? So that sort of set the stage for, like, using mini games, using mini games within the game, right? And so the idea that, oh, you're always designing mechanics, right? You're always figuring out how to pose a um, pose a situation to players, and then mechanizing it to give it some oomph, right? And I think that's a thing that actually is, the extent to which GMing is design, as well as creating, what Jessica Hammer has called secondary authorship, right? Creating adventures, um, but that includes the mechanics to support that, not just plot details. I was talking to a kid yesterday who I characterize as a plotted style GM. He's telling me about, Act One, Act Two, Act Three, and how that works. Um, but as I got him to talk more about it, he was telling me, well, I had to figure out. Oh, yeah. So, Act Three is the search for the artifacts that they need to seal the portal, and so I had to create a mechanic, to represent that, because I didn't care where it was or whatever. So they, it's 5e, so he has encounters. Each encounter has some value towards, it accumulates points towards finding the the specific artifact that they're looking for, and then once they've had enough encounters that have point values towards it, they find the thing, right? And so, and it's kind of a metagamey thing, and the players are aware of it, but they also like it. They like to feel that it's purposeful, right? And I was asking, where did this come from? And well, it's based on something he saw on Reddit, adapted to his particular problem, and and so the point of all this is, I hope, is clear that I think you'd ask about like game stories and mechanics, something like that. But the notion of mechanics as something that I find fascinating, and I think that is really a part of the GMing process, is something that I have noticed is part of what I do. My brother and I went to a friend's house. He wanted to have like a little apartment con, and we were going to play all night. And he ran a version of Traveler, right, where we had we had to do like weird mini games to um, to represent a lot of like piloting the ship through a wormhole or something like that. And it was like silly manual dexterity stuff, like get the ball, those little puzzles with the ball that you got to get into the hole and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, okay,
Ball and
that's
cup or like
ball and cup kind of thing. Yeah.
oh no, the
And
little like maze and you
yes,
swivel
yes,
it
just
around.
so,
Yes.
just so, and it didn't work, and it wasn't fun, and at the end, we I was definitely like, and my brother was certainly, you know, like, what the hell was that about? What was that? And this guy says, Bill, I learned that from you, because like, well, wait a minute. Uh, but so the but stylistically, the thing that I have noticed in terms, you asked about what has changed, and I know for a while I was designing, like I was writing adventures for Gumshoe. I wrote a thing called Castle Bravo, which is, and if you're not familiar with Gumshoe, the system, I was writing for Trail of Cthulhu, and this is a system where you plot out the spine of an adventure with the idea that you understand what the core clues are, that the game, that is the particular scenario, needs for the players as investigators to solve it, and then you can have like side scenes or alternate scenes or variant scenes with bonus clues, so that when they get to the final resolution or whatever final confrontation needs to be there, they have more juju to
Yeah, you
handle the threat, right?
you
And
always find the clue, but you can burn your stats to get more about that clue.
exactly right, exactly right. And I so I yeah so I designed a couple of adventures for that, and I realized that that was not actually how I like to GM, right?
Hmm.
I was I uh, like, again, I would you consider that very much in the, sort of a plotted style, and I move I have been moving towards, yeah, well, experimenting with a little more, just like a little more ad lib with like heavy reliance on random tables kind of thing,
Hmm.
but bringing that in, uh, like I find that entertaining for myself, right? To just create a space and use the results of an oracle or a random table to bring in new content, and then just adapt to that on the fly. I think that's entertaining for me, and I think enjoyable for the players.
One of
The
the things we talk about on the show, especially influenced by my other co-host Chris, who's been filling in while Maddie's been gone, has been that like remembering that you as the GM are also a player, and it's
Oh yeah.
totally fine in your prep to say, well, based on what happened last time, what's the most interesting thing to me that could happen next time? And it's totally viable for that answer to be like, chaos. I don't know. Let's see what the table says, which is very
Yeah,
much how I am too. So.
yeah, exactly right. I mean, that's great. The the movement towards games that leave space for that don't imagine that you always know what's going on, or know what the answer is, or need to know what the answer is I guess the thing that I'm moving increasingly towards.
Have you
And
played Trophy Dark or Trophy Gold, by the way?
I played Cthulhu Dark, which is the system that inspired them, and I've read Trophy Dark. And again, I guess I guess we did play something darkish in Common Hour D&D. I can't remember, but so I'm familiar with that system. Tell what.
I just as far as that idea of and I just wanted to connect this back to what you said. I just think that's insanely lucky that I mean, how old were you when you did the diplomacy thing? Was that still high school?
Yeah,
Yeah, you just like you lucked into or not luck necessarily, but like I imagine sort of the emphasis like diplomacy's cool, let's bring it into D&D.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
you lucked into like, oh, if I give players agency over big parts of the story, they're way more invested. Like,
yeah,
and like, oh, now we have a full context for the background of the world. Like all the things that I only learned thanks to like Forge and post Forge games and all
right.
the resources that are available now of like invite people to make decisions about the world. And now we have a whole episode early on, like world building with a light touch, where that's like all the advice, like ask leading questions, like,
Yeah, well,
you know,
absolutely, absolutely, and it's yeah, it's
and you found early success with that. And that's so great. No wonder you're so good now.
oh, well, that's nice of you to say. Yeah, I mean, every lesson is hard learned, hard earned, and often has to be relearned. Like, and uh, um, in my academic life, I realized that you know a, a little bit of theory can be a dangerous thing. Right? You have a theory about how something works, and the thing is, because theories are always partial and incomplete, when you apply them rigorously or take them to an extreme, they break because you're not accounting for something, like the edge cases or the variations or the different factors that may cause the 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 theory like not to apply and
And that's so hard for RPG players because geeks tend to really love a taxonomy.
sure, exactly, yes, just so and so yeah, but I liked, I let me see. So yeah, so I discovered the Forge for real in like 2004 when uh, I I wrote a game for one of the Iron Game Chef that Mike Holmes ran, and and I thought it was going to be like uh, oh, there's quantities of stuff, like it was, the keywords were um, island, dawn, and ice. And so, oh, dawn, dawn comes, and then assault, which I didn't use. So dawn comes to the island of ice. Great. So I had this vision. Okay, it's an island of ice in a world of night, and dawn is coming, right, for the first time ever, and everything's going to change. And so I had this idea that, okay, you're gonna track like quantities of bone and oil and and that's going to motivate the tribes hunters to go out and blah blah blah. And I realized you didn't need all of that. It was like some weird, Euro game kind of thing. Um, but you didn't need that if you had an oracle, that said hunger. What does that mean? Well, I guess the tribe's hungry. You got to go and hunt and figure something out, right? And so that and I knew this game was going to work when I play tested it with some high school kids, and they threw a card, and I asked them to read it. Well, what's the consequence of this? And up until this point, he had been rivals with one of the other PCs, like rivals turning into enemies, and the card was something I forget exactly what the card said, but he looked at it and goes, "Well, I guess I guess I like him a little better now. I was like, oh, okay, yes, yes, yeah, that changes things. And so like that's uh the the idea that players will respond to the the inputs the same way that that a GM would, right? As, oh, I have to make this make sense. If the players aren't on board and they're in this situation with you, then they'll do the same thing, right? We're all on the same page. We're all trying to be on the same page, and so that's quite thrilling. Oh,
Yeah, there was a quote on an episode of Hypothesis, and I wish I could remember the designer's name, but it was basically like, what is a setting was the question they were talking about.
okay,
And one guy's answer was a setting is a state of play that is out of balance that provides gameplay experiences or provides feedback that are the gameplay experiences to the players.
I can see that. Yes, right. I mean, because that's what you want it to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you're
Yeah.
setting and setting detail
You
that
got to
people
have
enjoy.
something out of balance so there's a problem for people to solve. But I really sort of fixated on that idea of like the feedback that it provided based on some silly thing that I did in undergrad in my poetry program about
Oh, okay.
like what are some mechanisms like we're like basically like what is a way to evaluate a poem that is not traditional. And so I like Remora style latched on to this idea of machinima,
Oh, okay, cool.
and the idea of basically like in machinima of the time before there was cheap AI edits and graphics, like red versus blue is pretty much only things that it's possible to do in the game of Halo. Like
Right.
that, if you've ever seen that series.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only things that game engine's allowed to happen. They really couldn't do much in the early seasons, at least beyond what the game would allow you to do. So I got
Right.
to think, what is the game engine of this poem I'm reading? What
Okay.
what does the game engine of this poem allow you to do if you were writing a poem, your own poem with a similar game engine? And then I
Gotcha.
kind of latched onto that idea of like the setting provides feedback that shapes play experiences, which got me like the setting itself a lot of times is a set of common tropes. If you think about D&D, a westernized version or an Americanized version of medieval European
Yeah.
fantasy or late medieval European fantasy. Like it, but it's an Americanized version of it. And we have these
Okay.
shared set of tropes that both as the GM and player will provide feedback of what's possible and what you can expect to do in the game. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that makes role-playing games so magical because those are things you don't need
Yeah.
rules for.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? I mean, how do you respond to the observation that D&D has become increasingly self-referential, right? That it's like Appendix N notwithstanding, right? That it's the tropes that we're responding to are tropes that emerged in D&D or part of D&D or D&D isms, and
Yeah,
increasingly,
D&D is I think incredibly self-referential. It is more influenced today by the Dead Alewives Dungeons and Dragons Satan's Game skit than it is by anything in Appendix N. Like even going back to the early days, like other than like an entry in deity and demigods, like I can't see like any influence of Elric in D&D. And I also
right,
throw fits every time someone's like, "Oh yeah, it's just Tolkien." I'm like, "You need to reread your Tolkien because the only thing that's Tolkien-esque about Dungeons and Dragons is the fact that there are halflings.
right, right, right.
Like nothing else is like Middle Earth in that book. Magic is not rare. Like yeah, anyway. Other than yeah, you find a chest in a troll hole. Okay, but like no, there's a lot other stuff on a pin. We had a whole episode about this. But yeah, it's 100% like references from the broader D&D community. And then like the OSR is in which I love is
Okay.
a strange nostalgia for the early days of the game, predominantly by people that never played back then. Like
You- And so the division, trad, indie, OSR, do you think that's still true? You think that's
No,
still so how would you
I
like
think from my understanding of online communities, I think the great tragedy of the like Google Plus like OSR versus indie games is that rulings not rules and fiction first are the same thing.
okay.
Like, like it's like what makes sense in the story. Like you have to use that what makes sense to do a rulings not rules. And fiction first means follow what the story is telling you happens next as a logical consequence. It's two ways of saying the same thing.
Same thing.
And the
Interesting.
fact that those communities spent like a good 2 years ripping each other apart for the sake of like street internet cred makes me deeply sad.
But you associate that with Google Plus. So now that Google Plus has gone away, what's like what's the aftermath of that then?
I don't think there's a centralized community. I
Okay.
think the people that are still talking about it the most is the OSR blogosphere. Like
Okay.
they're the ones still having the kind of like Forge-esque conversations, but it's not really a conversation. I mean, I'm not on RPG Net uh, anymore, and like
Gotcha.
I don't have a story about being banned. It just kind of lost interest for me. Uh,
Gotcha.
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I'm just curious about the shape of the discourse, and I do think it's a lot of walled gardens that are largely invisible to each other. One of the comments that I heard after the publication of the Forge book was, well, you couldn't do that today, right? You couldn't do a book that, looks at this unified discourse about role-playing games because the data just aren't there, right? You can't. There isn't an archive you can look at and say, oh, here's and trace, right? Because it's all Google Plus went away and went away aggressively, right? Like, oh,
Hmm.
it was torched essentially, and uh, um, and to, today the media that people use, like forums, have gone the way of the dodo essentially. And so the use of social media means that everything is a little more ephemeral, harder to trace, and
Well,
yeah,
it's so heavily influenced and infiltrated by commercialized interests
right.
that those tend to shape the discourse, you know, like
Just
in those spaces, which is like, hey, good for people if they can turn their hobby into their hustle if that brings them joy. I would never begrudge them that. But like I don't know, maybe it's rose-colored glasses for the internet communities of the past, but people typically weren't in there trying to figure out how to make a bunch of money or become an influencer or like become the it designer.
yeah, yeah. Although uh, the there were definitely concerns about the toxicity of status and the the commercialization of like the commercialization of the hobby, right? Like, oh, is this really an industry, or is it just a hobby with aspirations of something more? And so the idea that uh, like I've done um, uh, conference papers where I've looked at the use of terms like indie and punk and seen that that gets the 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 idea that we're here to sell games kind of has certainly always been part of the indie scene, right? Or no, not always been part. Very quickly became uh, the assumption, right? Like the shared assumption, like tell me how to sell my game, or help me, you know, popularize my game. And for a long time, the new hotness was a phrase, right? What's the new hotness, right? So the idea that popularity and some kind of like what I mean, some kind of popularity was important, is definitely it's definitely part of certainly the North American hobby scene, role playing scene. I think it was a revelation to me to go to Knutpunkt in outside of Oslo in like 2009, which is the Nordic LARP scene, where because there's support for cultural programs in those countries, in the Nordic countries, that that LARP design tends, and because it's a more individualized product, right? It tends not to be commercialized, like focused on the product of the game the way that we did in the indie scene in the 2000s, and certainly I don't know enough to say, oh, I think the OSR is similar, but I think the OSR is similar, right? It's about, I'm going to get this product, I'm going to put it on Drive-Thru RPG, and I'm hoping that it gets big, right? I'm hoping it gets, pimp my game.
I guess there's an intentionality that I see in like and even in Reddit spaces or Facebook groups or those things, there's an intentionality of people who seem to be following the process of I'm going to build a community
Yeah,
and then I'm going to use this community space to like talk about my Kickstarter, and it's just like, hey,
monotone.
that doesn't make it a bad game, that doesn't say anything about the creators, but like there's now this like stepped path that kind of everybody's sort of follow, not everybody. Yeah, I don't know. I'm speaking in really broad generalizations, but I feel
Yeah,
that
no,
it takes away some of the sincerity from the discussion of the game design. And
yeah,
again,
yeah,
this is probably just super rose-colored glasses of it was better before old man yells at
yeah.
cloud. So,
I mean, it's uh certainly. I mean, I think that phenomenon has always been, and when I say always, yeah, I mean, you know what? I'll just say that's the hobby, right? That's the North American version of this hobby, is like we're selling games and we're selling games to each other, but certainly there's a degree of I don't know. I think use the word soulless comes to mind, right? And I don't know whether you used it, but I feel like you had it in your head.
I made
Um,
some word choices that implied it in context while trying to be politic,
okay.
but yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. That's very gracious of you. But yeah, the idea that that's become more intense, but like that is ramped up, right? Because like perhaps that used to be like surrounded in, like if you go and read Gary Gygax's the books that he wrote in the late 80s, Master of the Game, Role Playing Mastery, there's definitely and this is like post all of the unpleasantness with Arneson and him getting kicked out of TSR, and he's trying to piece it together for himself as well as explain things to the masses. But the notion of community emerges very powerfully, right, in what he says, right? And so, you can, like the steps to mastery, master, your game, right? Your play, become, a good player and then a good GM, and then maybe you'll design a game and publish it. That's but maybe you'll start a convention or a magazine or um, defend the hobby against the odious people who are attacking it, right? So the community vibe was something that he was writing about that, right? And even though if you want to point to someone who uh, was very much engaged in appropriating this intellectual property, or appropriating this folk practice as his own intellectual property, right? I mean, that's the
Hmm.
business that TSR was in, right? But in the after, even this guy, when he's looking back, is going, it's about community and giving back to that community, and maybe we should, maybe that's how we can contribute. Maybe that's how you can contribute. Think about Um,
Yeah, I think
so
that community is the reminder. I feel like a lot of people, and I think this may be generational because I'm of an age where I'm an early internet adopter.
okay.
I'm first on the internet in like the very early 90s at like the age of 11 or
Oh wow. Okay.
12. but I had had chances to see to form full in person, meet space communities before then. And so fundamentally, while I've enjoyed participation in internet communities, I've never taken them as seriously as
Okay.
I do
Oh,
real
that's
life
interesting.
face to
Yeah,
face
yeah.
connection. Even in the pandemic, I was unable to make the pivot. I just brought my face to face community online into our own walled garden, as you said. And so I remain to this day kind of suspicious of anyone that's in an open online space who calls it a community or says something in the interest of our community or keeping our community safe, because I'm like, this is a community where every third person is part of a multi level marketing scheme.
Right, right, right.
Like,
Yeah,
I don't think it's probably wise for your happiness,
yeah,
psychological safety, to think this is a community space.
yeah. That's certainly true. The
And that's the soulless, insidious part that makes me, through rose colored glasses, lament the earlier days of the internet before people started figuring out that we can just make money off it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I, I'm not going to argue with you. I have students in my public speaking class who are, you know, digital natives, and they they strike me as like I hear a lot of speeches. They're like, "Oh, the algorithm is messing with our minds. We need to do something about it or stop because it's terrible." You know what I mean? Like they um, my, uh, my students think that the digital environment that's been created around them is problematic, right? So they don't know what to do about it, but they recognize it as a problem.
Yeah,
Uh,
human beings are generally pretty smart. They
yeah,
know what's
sure.
happening around them.
Right.
That's
Yes. 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 And um, so there's that, right? And so the and I, you know, I understand the temptation. Gee, I would like some game I designed to be like big, you know, popular, you know, to for people to go, oh, that's a great game. And I want to play it, I want to buy it, take my money. Um, but but I also recognize that's a lot of work to do that.
Yeah,
Like
I'd
that
like the podcast to have thousands of subscribers, but like to do that, I would have to spend time on social media.
exactly right. You have to do that work,
I have
right?
to go to that place I don't trust where the algorithm is like supercomputers are pointed at my brain trying to make me buy things or at least keep paying attention so I can
Yeah.
see someone trying to make me buy something by being mad about the world. Yeah, that's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all, right? And so the idea of okay, how do we remain human in this world, right? And how do we create a space for others to be human in it is a really powerful one. And that's why like as I think about it, things like the things that I do like common hour D&D, right? Just getting people together during the day to play and to use this as a way to build what I'm gonna, you know, what you've given, I think, me authority to say, real community, right? In the
Yeah.
sense that it's, you know, it's even if it's a very ephemeral one, at least it's people in a room playing together, having a good time and enjoying themselves. Right? I think that's very cool. And now, and I feel a little. I was telling my boss about it the other day. And he's like, "Oh, you can totally put that on your annual report because it's involvement." You know, okay, okay. That I liked it. I think I liked it a little better when it was me stealing time back from the man.
Yeah.
You know. But
We did
okay,
a thing. I work for a large uh, software company, and I won't name them on the pod. I probably have before. I don't know why I'm being coy, but I work in learning and development. That
okay,
was my post. For some reason, right around the like March of 2020, international students stopped wanting to come here to learn English.
hard to believe.
So my field I have a master's in kind of evaporated. And I pivoted to working in learning and development for a large corporation. And for a while, I had a once a week lunch hour L&D and D where I was what was I doing? Oh yeah, I was just doing Shadow Dark, like just playing Shadow Dark with anybody that wanted to show up, rotating cast. We show
Yeah.
up, like here it is. This is a highly lethal game. Like the lights will go out. This is an older school style of play by on purpose. And if you like it, you're welcome to play as much as you want. And
Sounds
we
cool.
we played for a good year, like once a week, just on 1 hour lunch break. It was great.
And then what happened?
There was a corporate vibe shift, and we all decided to preserve our careers by not being seen to play a game on our lunch hour.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
But those people that I played with, like we have a morning business meeting where we walk to get coffee together, and we have this real community that
Nice. Yeah.
was built as a result of that. And
That's
I'm
cool.
it's the my coworkers I know the best.
That's cool. Yes. So, um, I, you know what? Let's just move on. Are
Okay.
there more questions?
I do. We talked a little bit about community, a lot about community. Are there particular books, movies, music, art, cultural media that have influenced the way you run games or play?
Let me see.
Do you have your own appendix in?
Yeah. So I would say it's Jack Vance and Roger Zelazny were the biggest influences on me in terms of the kind of fantasy that I like, the kind of fiction that I like. Um, the you know, my big, but I don't think that's terribly atypical, right? I remember stealing stuff from Roger Zelazny and just importing them wholesale into my D&D game in college, no, in
Is
high school.
Zelazny Amber?
Yeah, as Lasny is Amber, but the stuff that I stole from, oh, and actually no, I stole um the uh the battle on the stairs in the first in Nine Princes in Amber, the first one, um the lead character has to fight his way up a narrow set of stairs, like has to lead an army up a narrow set of stairs while a defending army uh defends it, uh, the narrow set of stairs, one, so they're fighting one by one. It's like, and so one guy, right? And I just like, oh, I think that's cool, and blah blah blah. But um,
Everything I know about Amber, I know from Amber the Diceless role-playing game, which I
oh
bought
yeah,
when it came out as a lark, as a teenager, and
you ever
read
play
it,
it?
and it went right over my head. And
Okay,
then,
yeah,
like 6 months ago, I reread it and was like, I have to play this.
yeah. The
This
thing
is
about Amber,
wild.
I have a friend, Mike, friend and colleague, um, who was big into Amber, and he says, "Well, the thing that Amber does, right, is that it recreates the dysfunctional family dynamics of the Royal Court of Amber in with the person of the GM as the distant, distant and inscrutable patriarch, whose whose whims shape the experience of the characters, right? And
Yeah.
so, and I've heard that actually a couple of times, right? That people, the issue of like because it's diceless, it's about the number, which number is bigger, right? And that's who wins. And so you have to narrate as oh, this, because you have this number you lose, because they have that number they win, and it goes down like this. But if you can convince the GM that you shouldn't look at this number, which is smaller, you should look at this other number. It's not my a fighting skill, but my warfare skill, because this is in tactics, it's strategy, blah blah blah, right? And so to a certain extent, there's it creates this dynamic where you're always trying to lean into your highest number, and that can lead to play that where basically the real game is how do you get the GM on your side, and
Yeah.
so that's
I was floored by the example of the character creation process where it's just like, this stat is the most important stat because blah, 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 blah. All right, bid for it. And everybody
Right.
bids. One guy bids almost all his points for that one. It's like, oh, he said it's the most important. And then
Right.
it goes to the next stat and it's like, this is the
This is
most
the most.
important stat. And I'm just like, oh, that's, you only get to do that once, but man.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
Like, I mean, that
so
does kind of lean more into the cult of the GM than like where I want to be today, but
yeah.
I'd like to
But
try it as an experience.
it's worth. I think yeah, I think it would be worth. I was just looking at it on my shelf here, uh, and um, like there's definitely something there, and there's other diceless systems that um, like I want to try something like that. And just see if there's a way to make that work um, functionally and productively and funly, in a way that.
That's on my list of weird ones I want to do. And Nobilis.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I want to
I don't
try
know a lot about
Nobilis.
Nobel, but
It's got a
um,
kind of a similar vibe, but not patriarchal. Would
gotcha.
be.
Yeah. Interesting.
Um, yeah, and then I want to try Jared's new game Schism, which is a body horror tribute
Interesting.
to David Cronenberg. Or Schism
Okay.
2, I guess he had done it before. There's a new version.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say that feels like that sounds like that sounds familiar. Um, the other thing you asked about influence, the other thing I would say is for some reason, I feel like the Crusades are underrepresented in fantasy role playing, and I'm
Okay.
always doing my bit to bring them back in. I read Stephen Runciman's History of the Crusades. He's a British historian, or was a British historian. He wrote a 3-volume History of the Crusades. Really, I only read the first volume, which is all about the First Crusade. And I dig it, and I think that in a modern context, it has so much influence on why the world is the way that it is, right? The fact, and it underlies so many of the tropes of D&D, the you know castles in exotic lands, and um, there's literal um, um, princesses in distress, and I mean there's a lot there um, uh, about that's part of real history, but again, but has all of the scenic, trappings of medieval fantasy. Why not take that seriously? So I've done a couple of things. Like I there was a game called Chronica Feudalis that came out in the early teens, and I ran a uh, First Crusade from Italy to Jerusalem with a couple of a group of local players, I guess 3 or 4 folks, and it was interesting to me the 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 monk character wound up converting, right? Wound up converting to Islam at the end. That I thought was interesting. Um, and uh, and I did. You ever hear of fantasy wargaming?
Um,
The,
is that a specific game
that's a
or
game. Yeah,
okay?
yeah. It's called.
Because I feel like as a concept, I'm
Yeah. No, here,
reasonably
I'll show
familiar.
you. I'll show you. It's I know that your listeners won't be able to see this, but this is a from the early '80s book called Fantasy Wargaming by some
I
British
found
gamers.
that, I think, at the public library in
Okay,
1992. The cover had been replaced, and I remember flipping through it being like, wow.
what is this? Yeah. So I ported it into Roll20, got it to work, and ran some players through um, a group of Templars, like before they were Templars, like the first uh, before they were big, right? They were little. They were a handful of guys who had gotten access to the Temple of Solomon, right? Like that was the temple, right? The Temple of Solomon. And I was like, okay, there's got to be a dungeon under there. So I used those rules to have knights, you know, uh, First Crusade era knights exploring a dungeon underneath Jerusalem.
Oh,
in
nice.
the 11th century. It was a blast, right? And it was full of demons because it's the Temple of Solomon, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of demons. And we didn't get very far, but and they found the head of John the Baptist.
Okay.
And that was the artifact they were looking for. So that was cool. And then but the thing I've done that's been the most successful with that was I took the Sword, the Crown, the Unspeakable Power, which is a PBTA game that's like Game of Thronesy vibe. It's for doing
Okay.
medieval politics with magic and things like that. And so I ran that a couple of times, where you start in Constantinople, and it's a couple of Byzantines, the Byzantine emperor and his daughter, some crusading knights and priests, and peasants. There's Peter the Hermit, who was like this preacher who led an army of peasants essentially to their doom, but he made it okay. And then a couple of
Ain't that the way, though?
Ain't it the way? And then a couple of Fatimids, the Egyptian, I guess so the Abbasid Caliphate is in Baghdad, and the Fatimid Caliphate was in Cairo, and they were enemies, right? And so there's actually like some delightful maybe the wrong word, but the politics. The reason why the first crusade did as well as it did, is because the politics, the internal politics of the Muslim leadership was so fragmented that they're all fighting. They thought it was more important to fight each other than to fight the knights, right? And so,
Yeah.
um, and so, and so, learning more about that and taking that seriously, and then turning that into a game, was quite fun. And I ran it at a con just a couple of months ago, and it worked. It was like, I want to say it was amazing, right? It was a lot of fun. The players were really into it, and it worked super. The woman who played Anna Komnena, the emperor's daughter, stayed behind in Constantinople and basically manipulated things from behind the scenes. So it was really cool.
Oh, that's super
And
cool.
so I guess, like, while science fiction and fantasy is a huge influence on me, I like history in my games.
Have you
Like,
read Wolves of God?
I read about it. I haven't read it. That's tell me about it.
Kevin Crawford's game. It uses the basically stars without number mechanics, um, but it is full of
It's
tables.
Yeah, it's the
You are
setting is
7th century Anglo-Saxons,
right,
newly
right, okay.
Christianized, going on adventures in the service of your king or to solve the problems of the nearby minster. And the conceit of the game book is that it was a recovered text written by Brother Cornix, a monk of the
Oh,
time,
okay, yeah,
who is
that's right. Okay, yeah,
describing.
I
So,
remember
like, it
reading
has
that.
some great passages like all gamesmen agree it is met that or like that the
Yeah,
games
yeah.
contain rules for scenes of adventure such as the clashing of spears and blah 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 and a cattle raid. Thus, I present the rules to you for cattle raiding. And then there's a mechanical system for how to do a cattle raid in the game.
Uh, yeah,
Uh,
Chronic of Feudalis had a similar gag in it.
it's
Like it was
it's
written from the
pretty
perspective
great.
of the So cool.
I That's on my
Cool.
list of historical things I want to do, and
Neat.
I've been listening to so much Fall of Civilizations, the podcast recently,
Okay.
which are these deep dives into like, well, not deep because it's like a 2 hour podcast, and it's
Okay.
the rise, golden age, and fall of a civilization, including music and poetry and writings of the time if they can get them in, and so there's like 19 episodes I think now. It's just fun to sit at work and listen to how civilizations die for no reason connected to real world events at all. Um,
Wow. Wow. Yeah, you're the second guy today. Second guy today that I've been talking to who is um yeah, with a similar vibe.
yeah,
And
some people their comfort show is The Office. Mine is How Do Civilizations Die? But it's really made me think I would love to do something historical in the Bronze Age. Like,
oh, okay, sure. Yeah, yeah.
Like I actually had a game pitch to a gaming group that like we still have such a deep roster of people wait in line to run games, which is a blessed problem to have. Run
Right.
campaigns, I should say.
Oh,
Like,
gotcha. Yes.
but it was just like, okay, so it's Exalted using Exalted Essence Edition, so it's pretty playable. But it's just like, here's my pitch. You are the Bronze Age collapse. And then
Okay.
yeah, you're the
Nice.
sea people. And there you go.
Right, right, right. Oh, that's neat. Right. That's cool. Yeah. Wow.
I'd also
And,
love to at some point write like research and write the role-playing game of like pre-Roman contact or like far enough across the Rhine Germanic tribes, mainly because I was thinking about the like if I wanted to write something in my ancestry,
right.
to
What would that
like
be?
to like so I could do it without like worrying about doing some cultural appropriation. What could I
Right, right,
do
right.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
like okay, it's a dark forest full of full of tribesmen in Germany burying people and strangling them and tossing them in peat bogs and adventure.
There you go. Fun. Fun. Yeah.
The
Um,
sacrifice has run away. Get him.
uh, yeah, I don't know if I'd play that game.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't actually be fun, but it'd be fun to write. I actually too, I was listening to a master class about daily life in the ancient world.
Okay.
And just the idea of like, the Egyptian temples that like the god is in his statue. Like, and on feast days, like there's the priest's job, like a couple months on, couple months off, is every morning to wake up and clean and rewash the statue because God's in there. And then
Okay.
on the
Yeah.
feast day, they carry the statue out and then, make sacrifice to him, and everybody gets to eat the sacrifice bits and they get their meat ration for the year. And that's like,
Right.
yeah, there we go. And I'm like, adventure ideas for that. Someone kidnaps the god. Like, there you go. Like,
Yeah. 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 That's that. I mean, it writes itself.
and like, do I need to buy Valley of the Pharaohs now? Like, okay, maybe. I don't know. Um, okay, well, we'll close it up because we've been going for an hour and a half, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh,
So,
it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed this.
yeah, I have too. I'd love to have you back on sometime if you had a good
Oh,
time as well.
absolutely.
We can
Yeah,
work out
absolutely.
details later. Uh, if someone were to tell the story of your life in RPGs, what
Hmm.
would you want them to understand the most?
Oh, let me see. Um, okay. So that I'm really very lucky, right? In that I've been able to turn role-playing games, my avocation or hobby, into a thing that I do professionally as a scholar, right? Like I um my my let me see. I'm trying to say this the right way. Um, and it's not complicated, right? I'm fortunate. I get to work on something that I love in a world where that's not common, where
Hmm.
that's not typical, and study a thing that I think is um, amazing, um, maybe misunderstood or not fully appreciated, generally, not even by those of us who do it, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so making and yeah, so I've always said, right, you study the thing, the thing that you study, like as a scholar, right, as someone with a PhD, you study a thing either because you understand it very well, you understand it real well, and it's your thing, or because it's totally mysterious to you and endlessly mysterious to you. And for me, it's the latter. Like so, making sense of role playing games is a thing that I feel very fortunate to be able to do in my day job, if not as a teacher, but as a researcher. And so it's um, that is my life in role playing games, right? Yeah, I love running games, and I love that um, part of what I get to do is study them and study how to run them better.
Yeah. That's amazing. Slightly jealous.
Yeah, I don't like to say that out loud too much because the gods and the fates have a way of taking shit like that away from you. So I shouldn't have said it out loud.
No, we can sail. We don't need to make a sacrifice to Hera. Let's just get on the boats. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Sounds
Um,
good.
all right. Well, this has been Bill White, GM to the stars on the Jaunty Mantis. And if you liked what you heard, please feel free to leave us a review on whatever podcasting service you caught the podcast on, or a comment on the YouTube of the podcast. And if you need to reach us, we are Jaunty Mantis at Blue Sky, and jauntymantis at gmail.com is our email address. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, get out there and play some role playing games, or don't. Mantis out.